Let's talk a little bit about the Trump second term. I know he's barely been in office for a month, but a flurry of executive orders which have both domestic as well as foreign policy ramifications. How do you see these 3 weeks that President Trump has been in office in the second term?
Well, it is extraordinary. There are some very positive developments. The most important is the normalization of relations with Russia that we've just been discussing. There's basically an assault on the U.S. Governance institutions internally, a dismantling of the regulatory apparatus, a dismantling of the federal civil service. This is very concerning. It is one man rule. It is not by Congress. It's not by law. It's not by a budget vote. It's by executive decree. What we see is a remarkable deterioration of American institutions. We're a democracy by hanging by a thread. We have certainly some institutional trappings of democracy. We have elections. But other than that, Congress is dysfunctional. It has no say in what's happening. We have one unelected person who happens to be the richest person in the world, Elon Musk, essentially dismantling the civil service. This is something astounding to behold. I don't think that this is a good approach for a sophisticated nation to dismantle its institutional apparatus this way. I actually don't think we need that kind of revolution inside the United States. What we need is rationality, plans, organization, explanation. We're not getting any of that right now. We're really getting a wave of noise, of tsunamis. We don't know exactly what, but what strikes me overall is that it's one person rule because it's all on the basis of executive decrees. Whether the courts hold.
Yeah,
oh, sorry.
Sorry. Where do you see the opposition to this arising from? Is it going to be from the opposition party, the Democrats? Is it going to be through elections? But those, at least the midterms, are about a couple of years away. Or do you see it from the courts effectively staying this kind of executive orders?
It's a little hard to know. If the Supreme Court says, well, the executive has all the power, the Supreme Court could hand over essentially the institutional apparatus to the president. This has happened in history. There was a Roman Republic, which became a Roman Empire. I'd say the United States Republic is on very shaky grounds right now. There is no internal consensus about any of this. The Democratic Party is in an utter state of shock. I don't know if it's essentially the same as the state of Congress in India, but it's a party that messed up so badly in the United States, governed so badly that it is very weak right now. Our system has so many deterrents to third or new parties. This is one of the weaknesses. We have a duopoly of power that doesn't really mean very much. And we have a Congress, the U.S. Parliament, that is so corrupted by campaign finance that it can't even think straight anymore, can't even defend its own prerogatives, which are in the Constitution, vis-a-vis the executive branch. So this is an adventure for the United States. The rest of the world should watch with concern. But this is, to a large extent, an internal matter. What matters for the rest of the world is how the United States acts vis-a-vis the rest of the world, and especially if it acts peacefully or not peacefully.
I want to talk about the ramifications for the rest of the world. Twofold. One, I want to talk about this whole business of reciprocal tariffs. Trump, in the barely 1 month that he's been in office, has already announced tariffs against Canada and Mexico, which he's put on pause. He's announced and implemented tariffs against China. There's 25% straight-up tariffs on aluminum and steel across the board. And, of course, last week he announced reciprocal tariffs across the board, again, for anyone who trades with the United States. How do you likely see the rest of the world responding to this?
Well, the rest of the world should do or will do two things. One is the rest of the world will put measures against U.S. Trade on a bilateral basis. So there will be a response. There will be a response from China. There will be a response from other countries. In other words, the U.S. will become more isolated in international trade. The second thing is the rest of the world should continue to have an open trading system. What Trump is doing makes no sense economically. It's not somehow favorable for the United States. It's not somehow the U.S. Gaining and hurting the rest of the world. This is self-damage of the U.S. It's going to make the U.S. Poorer. It's going to make the U.S. Less dynamic. It's going to make the U.S. Less connected with the rest of the world. It's no advantage for the United States. It's just a mistake. It's based on, frankly, 17th century ideas of mercantilism, that if you have a trade deficit, something is wrong. It's simplistic, and that's where we really are right now. But for the rest of the world, stay open, continue to trade. This is why economic growth is rapid. This is why India is growing rapidly. I was just in Ethiopia for the African Union Summit. They're achieving 8% per year growth. Southeast Asia is growing rapidly. China is growing rapidly because of open trade. And so the United States is turning protectionist because it's confused, it's wounded, it is upset that its unipolarity has been shown to be a myth. Well, okay, those are all psychological debilities of the United States, but they're not a reason to dismantle open trade and finance for the rest of the world.
The economic argument, of course, just doesn't seem to make sense as to why the Trump administration would go on this almost trade war with its biggest trading partners, because ultimately prices increase and American consumers end up paying more. But the political argument, again, please feel free to correct or explain to our viewers why this political argument is flawed. The political argument is, the industrial Midwest of the United States lost all its manufacturing jobs because China started manufacturing and India started manufacturing and all the rest of the world started manufacturing because of these open trading systems. And Trump and his MAGA base, his vice president, they all believe that if manufacturing has to come back to the United States, then they have to raise the walls and they have to become mercantilist or protectionist, as you said. Is there any, truth to that argument?
Well, this is the political argument, and it is the argument that put Trump into the White House two times, because the swing states in American politics are the industrial Midwest: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Ohio, Indiana, and Trump has won the industrial states by saying, "I'm going to bring back jobs." What he doesn't understand is a very basic point. The real loss of jobs is to the robots. It's to the artificial intelligence. It's to the digital systems. You go to any factory. I tour factories all the time since I'm a development economist. There aren't jobs in factories in the kinds of industries that Trump is dreaming of. You go to an automobile factory anywhere in the world, by the way, anywhere. It has no people in it. It's got robots assembling the automobiles, and this is the future. So that's fine. People don't have to work in factories. They can work in other places and have a very good life and be very remunerative. Trump is trying to bring back jobs that don't exist. They don't even exist in China. I went recently on an assembly line in China. There were 80 workers on an assembly line that was about half a kilometer long, but it was all robots. And I was told in this factory, which was an astounding factory, that they had more than 1,000 workers on that line a couple of years earlier, but everything's been automated. So the idea that you're going to bring back jobs this way is just wrong. Trump doesn't understand it. He's picked people who are protectionist. The American psyche is wounded. It plays into politics. Anti-China is very resonant in the United States. It is in India also. But I don't think it's correct or accurate personally. I think we need decent relations everywhere in the world. So the point is it has worked politically, but it will not work economically. And the American people will come to see that what Trump has on the agenda of dismantling the government, of pulling out of the climate agreement, of giving the green technologies over to China and India and others, this isn't going to lead to any kind of prosperity for the United States.
And one final part as we come to the concluding part of this interview. What's going on in Gaza? So you had Netanyahu, the first head of government to visit the White House in the Trump second term. Trump has said he wants to make Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East, no right to return for the Palestinians. He wants Egypt and Jordan to, take in more of these Palestinian refugees. Do you see any of this going anywhere? Or if you can sort of, separate the sound and fury, and obviously this has caused a lot of outrage in the Arab world, what is Trump playing at? What is he trying to get to?
The situation is straightforward. There needs to be a state of Palestine alongside a state of Israel. This is the only way to peace. Israel has become increasingly violent and militaristic to prevent a state of Palestine from emerging. American politics is completely in the hands of the so-called Israel lobby. And it has been, no matter which administration, Democratic or Republican, for decades. In my view, the United States gave over its foreign policy to Israel. This is ridiculous. American interests are not served by perpetual war, violence, massacres, war crimes committed by Israel in Gaza and increasingly, by the way, in the West Bank these weeks. Now, Trump, if he wants a successful presidency, should aim for peace, not only in Ukraine, but also in the Middle East and in East Asia. It's not hard to achieve. The United States should change its veto of Palestine, which it vetoed last year in the UN Security Council, to a pro vote. And then there will be a state of Palestine, there will be a state of Israel, and there will be a normalization of relations with Israel, which will give Israel real security. What we're watching right now and asking is Trump, like every other American president, simply in the hands of the Israel lobby? We don't know the answer. If he has any sense, he'll save his administration and change direction as he has done with Ukraine. It's too early to say whether he will wise up or whether he'll do exactly what Biden did and what Trump did in his first term and what Obama did, which was do whatever Israel has said. I say that Netanyahu is the great wrecker of American presidencies, because Netanyahu, to my mind, is a very violent person who makes no sense. And we ought to say no. There will be a state of Palestine, period, because the world does not want the war in the Middle East to continue.
All right, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for this enlightening conversation, and thank you for your time. Thank you.
Great to be with you.